Now, if we look at the urban political landscape, it is clear that the emphasis is on social justice, and Dr. Ellis did an excellent job of explaining why. And we are rightly drawn towards messages about seeking justice for the widow, the fatherless, the stranger, and the poor of all races. And we must continue to advocate for these issues. We must continue to affirm their importance, to double down. That said, they do not exist in a vacuum. Understand that the impact of injustice and inequality is even more destructive when our families are broken. And we are less likely to take advantage of the opportunities that are available when our families are broken. But it's an open secret that in urban politics, you're not supposed to talk about all that family ethics stuff. Y'all better keep that at church. You better keep that at home. Talk about it in private. You see, we have bought into the idea that somehow you can separate your values from your politics, separate your values from your votes. But no one else really separates their values from their votes. Does anyone ask an environmentalist to separate their values from their votes? Absolutely not. Your values are principles and standards of behavior. As an attorney and someone who has drafted legislation, I can tell you that laws are based on just that, principles and standards of behavior. You cannot impact law without applying values. And voting your values is not a violation of church and state. That's ridiculous. Read the document. It's what people of all traditions and all beliefs were supposed to do, were expected to do, within the confines of the Constitution, within the confines of the Bill of Rights, with respect for pluralism. Not to impose our beliefs on others, but to have an opportunity to persuade them in the public square. So let's call this phenomenon what it is. Listen to this. The idea that you can separate your values from your politics is a political construct, a political expedient, better yet, a cop-out. For those in the urban political class who are dependent on the favor and the resources of the far left. We recognize game when we see it. That's game. That's a subterfuge. It's a way to identify with your faith-based constituents, get their votes, without ever really having to advocate for their values that may offend your buddies on the far left. It's a way to avoid biting the hand that feeds you. But let me tell you something. If you're not voting your values, you're simply voting someone else's. In urban America, we have endorsed an agenda that says the conversation about the family ethic and values is off the table, when that's one of the primary conversations our community needs to be having, along with criminal justice. But what we have to realize and be bold enough to say, not only in here, but out there, is that agenda, that's not our agenda. Those values are not our values. Liberalism doesn't have the capacity to contain your convictions, and conservatism doesn't have the capacity to contain your compassion. If you want to identify with one or the other as a frame of reference, go for it. But don't ever put your faith into a political ideology. Don't ever put your faith into a political party, or a social movement for that matter, that is not biblically centered. Can you work with them, find common ground, and do great things? Please do. But be like Daniel. Know where you draw the line before you enter into this temporary partnership. Don't lose your identity in the newest thing, the most fashionable and most radical thing today. We affirm the social justice leanings of the urban political model, insofar as they align with biblical justice. But we reject the idea that we must leave our values at home.